That person you've been following, the person who's been breaking all the transfer news, Talia Goodman, she's here. She's here. We get to ask her anything. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hi there and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal. I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. You guys keep showing up for us the way we show up for you 6 days a week, and we are delighted to have you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. It is not just me, of course. It is the incredible team over at The Next, at thenexthoops.com, covering all things college, pro, high school, international, you name it. We cover the women's game. We have so much talent there, and man, as talented as anyone on our team, Talia Goodman, who I have had the good fortune of working with, who covered the Final Four with us, who is all over the transfer portal. Talia, have you slept in the past month at all?
Not much, but probably more than, Caitlin Clark has. I think she's been on the move a little bit more than me, but
we got to get you a shoe deal. We got to get you a shoe deal.
I'm up next, right? I mean, I'll take it.
I think so. Well, we have a lot to get into. It is portal madness. And we have a count as we are recording this on Monday afternoon, 1,314 entries. Our transfer tracker, it is up. You can bookmark it. You can love it. Sponsored, of course, by CBB Analytics. There are new schools aplenty. And so we're going to talk about some of the big winners here in segment one. There are some prizes on the board that coaches are chasing after like crazy as well. And then we're also going to talk about some lessons learned. Talia's had the chance to talk to these coaches about, what do you do differently next time? What do you need to do better for those who didn't get who they wanted? And for those who did, how did they do it? But to start with winners of the portal, there's this college in Southern California, USC. I don't know if they had any players of note coming in, a certain Juju Watkins, but they have even more now. Just take me through how big a deal it is what Lindsay Gottlieb has put together there.
She has done a phenomenal job, as good as any, I would say, in the country in the portal this offseason. I think, there have been rumors out there that Kiki Iriafen was considering a move to USC, and she got her, and that was maybe the pickup of the year. I'd say she was number one in the portal on my list, and they were able to get her. And then shortly after, Talia von Oelhoffen, who has a great name, by the way, decided to commit to USC. And I think that pair is just going to add so much to, obviously, you have Juju Watkins, who's a generational talent and is incredible. You have the best incoming freshman class in the country. And then you add these two stars. I mean, I have trouble thinking of anyone else as the number one, maybe two team in the country right now.
South Carolina obviously returns a lot, and continuity is worth quite a bit. But I do think it's notable that these multiple other stars and saw her in some cases, in both these cases, up close and made the determination that they wanted to play with Juju Watkins. How much do you feel like, to a certain extent, I know later on we talk about kind of lessons learned, right? But in the same way that we talk about stars attracting other stars, is this a referendum on what Juju Watkins can be as a player?
Absolutely. I think, you want to play with Juju. You want what she brings to the table. Obviously, now moving to the Big Ten, I think is perfect for USC. They were stuck on Pac-12 network a lot of the time last season, and now they'll get that national attention that they deserve, right? And I think everyone wants to be a part of that.
It's really interesting to me that the changes in conferences are obviously having such diametrically opposite views depending on where they went. It's interesting in a way that I think we may look back with surprise years from now, which is to say that there's an assumption that USC is going to thrive in its new conference, what I think is fair. But there's obviously this equal assumption that Oregon State is going to struggle. And what I wonder is this: how much do you think at this point conference is destiny, and how much of it is just that will turn out to be the case because players can move now?
Yeah. I think conferences matter for sure in the level of competition that you're playing, but we see it with Gonzaga, how they schedule such a tough non-conference schedule. I think that'll help teams like Oregon State, or maybe looking to be moving down in level of conference. I think if you schedule hard enough of a regular season non-conference schedule, that'll end up helping you because you'll dominate your conference. And so that is a plus in its own right, but it's hard to stay atop the rankings, which are somewhat meaningless, whatever, but it's hard to stay atop the rankings if you're not playing that level of competition during conference play.
The Pac-12 disappearing is something I'm still kind of getting my mind around to a certain extent. The Kiki move in particular, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not choosing. That wasn't like Oregon State. This is choosing effectively the Big Ten over the ACC. What is it about? No, you.
Well, I mean, Tara did retire. To be fair,
yeah.
To be fair.
But do you think it feels like, and you hear this conversation across the board, that people don't view the ACC as a winner in the same way that the Big 12 and the Big 10 are? ACC reeled in some big fish. No Tara, but Stanford. I mean, there are quite a few schools that have basketball traditions and the opportunity, presumably, to have large NIL funds. Why is that difference the way it is? And is that what you're hearing too when you're reporting?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it is viewed that way, but I haven't figured out why, that's for sure. I mean, you have Louisville, you have North Carolina. I mean, I think the ACC is a great conference to be in. But I do think, the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC are regarded a little more highly, which is weird, and I don't know why.
When you look at the SEC, when you look at what Virginia Tech has done, Kenny Brooks, who's recently been on the program, had a lot of work to do. This is a program that needed a lot of help. Do you think Kentucky has done enough to contend by next year, or do they have more they need to do?
I mean, I think they definitely have more they need to do right now. They started off strong, obviously. Able to bring some of your players with you will help. But I think they need to do a little bit more in the portal, and it's slowed down recently. They still have, I mean, I don't have it but off the top of my head, at least a few roster spots open right now. At least, I think more than a few. So there's definitely more they should do and more they can do. There's still, I don't know, like 800 transfers on the board right now, so they have their pick. But I think there's definitely more to do before you can consider them, a top 25 team. I don't think they're at that point yet.
Who did the best in the SEC in your view? Who's the clearest winner in that conference?
In the SEC, I mean, LSU would be what comes to mind first. They had that triple announcement on the same day that kind of blew everyone's minds a little bit. But I think it was impressive what they were able to do. I like Ole Miss's additions as well. But yeah, I think none of the SEC teams are my true winners of the portal, I would say, but I do like what LSU was able to do a lot. They filled in some high level talent.
Take me through your other big winners.
Yeah, so my biggest one is Brenda Friest in Maryland. Yeah. I think it's just mind blowing. I think over the course of 5 days, they landed 4 big time transfers, right? Saylor Poffenbarger at the top of that list. I'd say Amari DeBerry, I think, was yesterday. Yeah. But just what she was able to do, and she knew she needed to go out and get talent, and she got it like that. You lose a few players and you bring in a higher level talent, and I think the players she was able to get were really impressive. Kayleen Smichael is another one from Rutgers who I think will find success there as well, and she always gets the best out of her players. So
I saw Smichael live on multiple occasions. She is a player, right? And I feel like it didn't quite get the attention that some of the other bigger transfers did. I wonder if part of that's just a carryover. She did not have a big rep coming out of high school, so I'm sure that plays a part. But, to my mind, people just kind of write off Brenda Freeze every year. And it's just so funny to me. She's in the tournament every year. She's usually winning games. She's usually in that final game if she's not winning the Big Ten. It boggles the mind. But yes, I think she did remarkably well. I want to get into some other winners as well. And of course, who was left on the board in segment 2. So back with Talia Goodman, much more to talk about. But first, Mother's Day is here, and DoorDash knows it, and DoorDash, friends, is here for you. DoorDash offers you right now 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on flowers, convenience store, grocery, or your retail DoorDash order. The podcast code is Locked On NBA. And again, you get the opportunity to, let's say you want to make sure that that special mom in your life or mom figure gets your flowers. Literally, if you want the opportunity to have a family lunch at home instead of going to one of those busy restaurants, DoorDash is here to give you the opportunity to do it. It's just lots of different ways to make mom smile. Get the gift that is both convenient and affordable for you. Again, 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 plus. Use the podcast code Locked On NBA. That's the podcast code LOCKEDON NBA, and select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets, food, the best of tech delivered right to her door. Back with Talia Goodman, Queen of the Portal, and here to talk about, and that's right, isn't that correct? Queen of the Portal?
I would not give myself that title, but I do appreciate it.
We have to bestow it on Queen of the Portal is how I think we need to address you as your Highness, Your Majesty. We'll figure it out as we go forward. But talking about that portal, there are, what did you say, 37,315 players left on the board? Is that right?
Right, maybe like 40,000 at this point.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for real though, there are these. I know we talked about this before we started off the air, right? Weeks and weeks ago. There are hundreds of players who don't necessarily have a home.
Yeah.
And so I want to get into what that means, because that's a problem, right? Like, yeah. I don't mean to over dramatize it, but like, if you ask for like a trial separation in a marriage, it's sometimes hard to get back together. And so you're then looking for like, well, what's next? And there are hundreds who are still looking. Who are the players who were definitely getting those spots? Who are the biggest potential wins left for colleges?
I mean, Deja Kelly is up there, Liza Carlin. There's a few still left on the board. There's not many of the top ones, I will say, but there are definitely some who are still looking. I think in the last few days, a lot of them have come off the board, unfortunately. But Donovan Hunter is another one who's high on my list there. There's a few, but they are dwindling by the day, I would say.
It's funny, we were talking off the air about the fact that from the time we record to the time we put this podcast out, that we're going to see more people potentially committing as well. To my earlier question, though, and to the point about this, how in the coaches you're talking to, how in their minds do they view players who make this decision? Is there a variance of opinion? Is it, no, if somebody makes the decision they want to go elsewhere, good luck to them and there's no coming back? How does that all work?
I think there's differing levels of opinions on that. I think, there is more of an understanding of it right now, I think, of entering the portal, of, trying to get your money if that's what you're looking for, whatever it is. But I think NIL has a bigger role. I think there's also just about looking to see if there's a better fit out there for you. And I think some coaches are pretty understanding of that, and others are like, absolutely not. You can't come. If you enter the portal, you're done. You're going somewhere else, right?
Right.
But we've already seen players, withdraw, whether it's, coaching change, which I think is more understandable, or just, the grass wasn't greener when they looked and they like where they are and they made that decision and the coaching staff, welcomed them back. So I think there's a differing kind of view on it depending on, maybe where you are, the level you're at, all that sort of thing. They're all factors into that. But I think it depends on each situation, I would say.
Can I just point out, it's sort of more under the radar, but Jillian Herter going to Fairfield that's a really good fit. And that goes, Fairfield, maybe that's not the first college that you talk about when you talk about the big powers, although, Carly's making certain that is changing pretty quickly. But to me, I've seen Jillian play. I saw her play in high school, and I've seen obviously Fairfield and the system they have. Bringing a shooter like that in to the system that they run is just going to be next level for that offense. And they were already one of the most efficient offenses in the country. Do you think there is a comprehensive understanding on the player side? You talked about getting that money. And that's not to be dismissed either, right? Everyone has a right to earn what they can earn at this time. But college is also setting you up for what comes after, whether that's literally money you can bank, which is not nothing, or it is the best situation to be able to play, to want to continue to play at the next level. And I know we've talked about, with someone like Haley Van Lith, where, better fit. Is there a comprehensive understanding of that, in part, not just because of Haley, but just in general, seeing that it's, and I don't mean in like a get off my lawn kind of way, the grass isn't always greener. I mean, literally looking at, what are they running? How does my game fit into it? Or is that not coming up on a regular basis?
I think for, certain players, it surely is, but I think there are a lot of them who are being recruited by these big level schools. They hear the name, the coaching staff, that's what they've wanted since they were a kid, right? Is to be recruited by, these Power 5, Power 6 schools. And they hear that and they get overexcited and they want to commit right away because, they want to win. And that's a good thing. That's what you should want, right? But they're not necessarily thinking about how they'll, factor into that, how their role will change when they get there. I don't know if they, talk to the coaches about it or not. And it's just kind of maybe not clicking. But I think there's something of, hearing the name and saying that's where I want to be. And that's what they think makes sense for them in the moment. And I'm not, disputing that. Like, that's completely understandable. But there are a lot of factors that you have to think about when you're transferring, for sure.
It's so complicated. And there's so many moving pieces. And my heart goes out to players who are trying their best to make the most of this chaos. But to be a single part, I'll give you an example of somebody who I think did real well for herself. And that's Layla Filia.
Yeah.
And seeing her go to Texas, I think what she's going to be able to do with Vic Schaefer in that offense. And again, people always talk about Vic as a defensive coach. We've talked about this on the podcast. When his teams are at their best, they are top 15 in offensive efficiency as well. Yes. And you put her next to Rory Harmon. And, I just can't wait to see that combination. I think it's going to be fascinating to see. But there are a lot of players who, I don't want to get into specifics because I'm rooting for things to work out for everyone.
Yes.
But there are players where you just say no, like how, and it's disconcerting because they're 19, 20 years old making decisions that are, affecting a person's life and someone who's put all this time into it. So I from a coaching perspective, from a coach's perspective, do you think they are not just looking for collecting talent, but they're looking for best fits for their system? Or in that case, is there so much chaos right now that it really is like, let's find where there's relationships and then we'll figure out the system later?
I mean, from what I've heard and who I've talked to, it is about best fit. And that's, what you look for. Obviously, you're reaching out to talent, right? Because there are so many people going after everyone. You want to get in there before you even necessarily know that they're the best fit. You want to make sure your name's kind of in the ring. But I think it absolutely is best fit for at least, the top schools out there. You've seen who's ended up there, and you can tell that they've talked about best fit, and that's what they're looking for. But there is, a desire to have big names on your team every time, right? I mean, the Kiki Iriafens of the world, like, you want her, anyone wants her. I'm sure every single school in the country would want Kiki if they could get her, right?
And to be fair, what system wouldn't work for Kiki, right? There's no system where you're like, no, we want 5 guards and we're going to de-emphasize rebounding. I mean, I guess that's a possibility. One guard, before we get to our second break, but who I have to bring up is Lucy Olson going to Iowa. Oh my God.
That was
Lucy
a great
Olson
pickup for them.
in that system, it's like, if you think about it, and no one can beat Caitlin Clark, and it would be unfair to ask her or anyone to beat Caitlin Clark. But you say, all right, you've got the system, you're returning a lot of the top players who operate in the Caitlin Clark space, right? In that scenario, you couldn't have picked a better person in college basketball today, as far as I can tell, than Lucy Olson.
That also, like, it elevates them. No one was really considering them as a top 25 team, like, before they got her, right? Which I think was kind of crazy. I think they were still a top 25 team. But now that they have her, I mean, they're back in everyone's good graces. You got Lucy Olson, you're good to go.
Lucy Olson, Hannah Stuelke, that is going to be a fun team to watch. All right, so bigger picture lessons that we've learned coming back in segment 3, more with Talia Goodman, Queen of the Portal. I'm calling it. Queen of the Portal, back right after this. Friends, there is not women's college basketball right now, and there is not WNBA right now, but I have researched and looked into it, and there are sports taking place. There's a league called the National Basketball Association. It's a basketball league for men who also, and God bless them, right? Like, they should get an opportunity to play too. I think that's good for them. They're actually playing their playoffs right now, if you can imagine such a thing. And yeah, there are some people who are very excited about it. We obviously are in a position where there's not women's basketball for us to be watching here in the United States, and we're looking for something else to do. FanDuel has got you covered. It's playoff time in the NHL also. It's the National Hockey League. It's like the men's version of the PWHL, right? There's also baseball, Major League Baseball. FanDuel gives you a chance to bet on every single game. New customers can get $150, in bonus bets guaranteed. So you place a $5 bet, win or lose, you get $150 in bonus bets. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks. Yes, it's true. Some of the men dunk as well, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make your first bet an automatic win. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, not just for women's sports, but for men's sports too. Talia, had you heard about that, about the NBA?
I didn't know that was a thing. Thank you so much for telling me about it.
Where are you located? You're in Indiana right now?
Right now, I'm in Indiana.
So
there's a team here, apparently.
Yeah, a little brother team called the Pacers.
I think they're pretty good.
Owned by the same people that own the Fever. It's interesting. Worth looking into. Yeah, just something to operate your time. Couple of weeks till May 14th and the first night of the WNBA. So what lessons have we learned from all of this? I'm demanding long-term answers from you, holistic answers about what we have learned about this chaotic moment. Look into the future. What are coaches going to need to do differently a year from now based on what happened this year? Let's start there.
Well, I think the biggest lesson that we've learned is that we need to be on our phones 24/7 because there are going to be names in there 24/7 until May 1st. And I'm glad that they switched that's the deadline for everyone now, because I just think it would be too much. And I think the lesson that coaches have maybe learned is that this takes up a lot of their time, right? You can't be out recruiting as much. High school kids, like, you've got to be constantly clicking on the portal, reaching out to people, getting people's numbers. Like, I think it's different now because also everyone has an agent. So it's just like they have people that you got to go through to figure it out. You got to find the best fit. It's a whole process for the entire staff. There's no break. There's no time off from it. The portal does not stop. It goes, I mean, there are names being entered at like 10 p.m. I'm pretty sure Kiki Iriafen went in at like 10 p.m. when she came in. Like, there's just no break. And I think that makes it really challenging for coaches to operate during their off season.
It's aggravating. I mean, again, Kiki's using the wrong time zone, and we know that already. 10 p.m., but 7 p.m. Pacific time. I recently spent some time on the West Coast, and there are entire states that do it wrong. But when you get to that May 1st, you get that opportunity to finally get a breather. Do you think at that point there are going to be some schools that take stock and say, our approach was entirely wrong? I mean, literally, are there schools that are going to look and see this talent drain and say, we have to revamp the way we approach the way we collect talent?
I don't know. I think that's an interesting point. I think I don't know. That's a good question. I think there are some schools who maybe wish they had done things a little differently or gone about it differently. But I think for the most part, the process is look at what's available, see what fits you, try to get them on a visit if they're not too far away, hopefully. Find what will, draw them in, and don't take talent that you don't need, right? I think that's the biggest thing is don't say sure thing to someone if they're not going to be a perfect fit for you. And I think there are maybe schools who did that, and maybe we'll regret it. I mean, we'll see how it all works out in the end, but I think a lot of teams did really good things in the portal, and there's still, I mean, yes, the portal closes on May 1st, but there's at least 800 who haven't committed yet, and that's still you can still contact them. That's still open. The portal is still running even though it's closed.
Up and down this list, and again, go over to thenexthoops.com. Where we have it, you can see there's a ton of talent. I guess the other part of that to me that is so significant is I think there's a good chance that how players are treated by their current coaches will change because of this.
Yeah. Absolutely.
How many coaches have I talked to who have said, retaining current players, it's like a constant recruiting. It sounds exhausting as can be, but that's going to change as well. Do you think it changes for the better? Do you think it's just different? How do you anticipate? I know we're guessing. I'm asking you to speculate. And I mean, feel badly about that, but I'm curious what your impressions are.
I mean, I don't love that, to be honest. You have to treat every single, you can't be not mean, but it's hard to criticize your best player if you're constantly trying to keep them happy, right? It's hard to be honest with them if you feel like you're still recruiting them while they're on your team. I don't really love the idea of that. I think that's hard. You'll have to kind of coddle them a little bit when they shouldn't be, and give them what they want in order to I don't know. I feel like you recruited the kid, you got the kid. That you shouldn't have to keep recruiting the kid once you got the kid, right? And they're playing for you already. I don't love that.
I'll give you the opposite side of that. I think, and I know this to be true, coaches are not going to seek out certain kinds of players, understanding that they want to be able, and this certain coaches are going to want to coach up players and understand going in, if this player is not willing to be coached up in high school, maybe she's not willing to be coached up in college either. I mean, it just, the dynamics of it are so all over the place. It is absolutely fascinating to me. Talia Goodman, who, again, is as spectacular a young talent as there is in this industry. I do not say that lightly, and I do not say that absent ample evidence and proof. Talia, where can everybody follow you? What's the best way to do so? Please make sure you're doing it, audience.
I'm on Twitter constantly, literally probably every 30 seconds. My Twitter is now Talia Goodman, WBB, as in women's basketball. So that's where I am most of the time. I have Instagram if you'd like to follow me there, but I am on Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, all the time.
All I will tell you is follow her everywhere she goes and everything she does. She's going to do such great things in this industry. Talia, thank you for your time. And to our audience, thank you for making us your first listen every day. We will be back with you all week talking about full swing of WNBA training camp. And of course, so much going on the college game as well. Not to mention, there's an Olympics coming this summer. So we will continue to be with you. Until then, I'm Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful day.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.